Hey everybody, it's Bust with our 100 hours of gameplay review of Balatro. And so, over the course of this video, I'm looking to talk about the highs, the lows, the pros, the cons, the good, and the bad of Balatro. And I'm already going to assume that you have some familiarity with the game, whether or not you've maybe played it for a little bit, or at least learned enough about it to go out and purchase it, but maybe you haven't started to play it, and see if it's going to be one of those kind of high value games like Slay the Spire, to where you're going to be playing it for thousands of hours and still feeling pretty good about it. If it's something to where you play it for a month and you're kind of done with it, or if it's a big waste of money and not really worth that $15 to pick up. And so, if you're looking for how to play, we've covered off on maybe 25, 30 or so videos over the course of our channel. If you're looking for an intro guide to the video or an intro guide to the game on how to play and the structure and the format and things like that, this isn't it. Again, I'm going to assume that you have some familiarity with the game already. So, one thing I do want to call out before we proceed, everything I'm talking about here is on patch 1.0. This has been the release patch as the game was put out on Steam and on Switch and the like, and there is supposed to be a balance patch coming out over the course of the next few days. Pay a little bit of attention to the Balatro subreddit. I believe Local Thunk has said it's going to be a week or two. Think he may have said that over the course of about a week ago. And so, if there is a balance patch within the course of the next few days, some of the topics within here may not be entirely relevant, but I think a lot of the main points that we'll be making today are kind of patch independent, and I don't fully expect them to be fixed in the upcoming patch. And so the first thing I'll call out is jokers are cheaper than Netflix. I hate to distill a game down to its monetary value, right? A lot of my followers come from the space of Legends of Runeterra. That was a game to where a lot of the highlights, a lot of the good praise that it received was that it was free to play, but that doesn't necessarily point to the game being good, right? It was a good game, but if you say, hey, Bust, what's your favorite thing about Legends of Runeterra? And I say, yeah, it's free to play. It's very cheap. It's very cost effective. That doesn't really promote a lot of strength of gameplay, right? That's just a strength of the monetary value it takes to play. And you would prefer for me to say, oh, it's very exciting. It produces epic moments. It makes me think a lot. It's similar to Magic, but updated. There's a lot of positive things that you could say about it. And saying that it doesn't cost a lot of money doesn't tell me anything about the game itself. It just talks about the monetary value of the game. But, I feel like I have to put the kind of preface on it that if I'm going to give you a recommendation that you spend your hard earned dollars on something, then I have to at least give a little bit of monetary value, little monetary idea to it. And that's where I at least want to go with this. And so, in that sense, are you getting a good monetary value out of Balatro? I would say that you're most certainly going to. If you've played any deck builder in the past, it doesn't matter which one. If you've played any card game in the past, it doesn't matter which one. If you had some kind of positive experience between any of those game systems, you'll probably get $15 of value out of Balatro. The way that I kind of look at a lot of these things is you want to go to the movies, right? That's $15 to see a movie. That's $7.50 an hour at the end of the day. That's a kind of high rate in terms of what you're getting for your dollar. But you start to go and look at something like Netflix, right? Netflix is, I don't know, $20 a month. You might spend 10 hours a week watching Netflix. That gets you to like a quarter an hour or so. don't take my math for granted. I'm fucking terrible at it. But, that's kind of way it is. And so when you look at a game like Balatro and how much time you're going to spend playing it, are you going to get your $15 of value out of Balatro? I think that you most certainly will. If this is the kind of game that you pick up and you play for an hour and don't like it, feel free to just go ahead and get your refund on Steam. I think that they give you 2 hours to get to that point, but I think that you can most certainly be in the space to where you'll play this game for dozens to hundreds of hours, and for a select few of you, this might get it into that Slay the Spire kind of space to where you get up into the hundreds and up into the thousands in terms of gameplay. And so, again, I did want to give a kind of monetary reference. If you say, hey, Bust, are my dollars worth it here? I would say yes. I think that this is a fairly decent place to come in and put your money. I don't think you'll feel like it was lost. And so, to me, minutes to learn, lifetime to master is a fantastic description of Balatro. I know that some other card game used this. I don't remember if this was like early 2000s Magic the Gathering advertising or if it was Hearthstone advertising. I don't know where it came from. I certainly didn't come up with it. But minutes to learn, lifetime to master is a very realistic description of Balatro. If you are not familiar with deck builders, if you haven't played Slay the Spire, you haven't played Griftlands, you haven't played Ascension, you haven't played Dominion, if this is your first space coming into a deck builder and trying to figure out how they work, Balatro is the most absolutely fantastic way to go about it. You most likely know how the poker deck works. You most likely know how poker scoring works. You don't have to be, really in depth in it. You can have your little cheat sheet that you used that one time that you played Texas Hold'em at your friend's house, but it's very quick and easy to understand that, oh, I played solitaire while I was at work. I understand how this deck works. There's the 4 suits, there's the 13 different cards within, and those 13 cards within match with each other across the different suits. You understand how a poker deck works probably before you even jump into the game of Balatro. The same thing applies with the scoring. You probably understand that a high card is worse than a pair is worse than a two pair is worse than a three of a kind, and then you get up to the very big tall one, the biggest hand of them all, the royal flush, and that is the biggest one in terms of scoring. You already understanding those two things understand a big chunk of Balatro. And so where it's going to carry you from there are the interactions with the jokers to where the scoring changes and the interactions with the upgrades to your deck, cutting cards out, adding cards in, enhancing certain cards with your deck. It's a very good introduction to that space within deck building. Just building on top of something that you probably already understand. And then even if this is your first time playing with a poker-centric style of game, it's pretty easy to pick up there as well. Minutes to learn, lifetime to master. Maybe that was the Texas Hold'em saying. I'm not entirely certain, but I think it definitely applies to Balatro, and it's something that definitely has a lot of strategic depth to it. The thing that I'm kind of drawn to at this point is I know that over the course of the past week, there was a Balatro tournament to where a lot of the top streamers across YouTube and Twitch were brought together to try and high score on Balatro. And those people are just leagues above what I've been able to do over the course of the past 100 hours. And so I know personally there's just tons and tons of space for me to gain, tons of space for me to improve. I haven't even gotten to the highest level of stakes within the game, the gold stake we haven't unlocked yet. And so while I was able to pick up this game, figure out how to play it like literally within the first round of actually playing the game, I still feel like there are tons and tons and tons and tons of things for me to learn over the course of the game itself. And so up next, we have the style that suits you. You see, suit is a thing inside a poker deck. That works fantastically here, right? But no, if you think to a game like Magic, Magic has the descriptions of the player types. There's the spikes. That's what I am. That's your tournament try-hard kind of player, a sweat in the parlance of the Fortnite players of today's youth. There's also the things like the Timmy, the power gamer, if you will, the one that's trying to play the biggest creature, try to have the biggest effect, try to cast the biggest spell. And then there's going to be the Johnnies out there, the ones that really try and put together the complex combos. They may not be putting together the most efficient engine, but they're definitely going to put together the engine that puts the highest numbers out there on the table. And as far as Balatro goes, there's a lot of different styles that you can chase after, and there's most certainly a style that's going to suit you to where you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of the game. And so in terms of me, particularly with that spike persona, we were out here trying to complete all of the decks on all of the stakes, unlock that 100% completionist kind of thing. That's most certainly something that we've gotten 100 hours out of, could most certainly get multiple 100 hours out of afterwards. But there's also this other group of people out here that like to just score very big hands, trying to get up into the scientific notation of scores, most certainly a valid way to play the game. Then there's other people that just want something to kind of click on, right? You're hanging out excuse me, on the bus, you just want to pass some time for the next 10 minutes, you just kind of flip and flop on some cards on the screen. You get to see some flashy numbers turn up, more than valid way to play the game. And then that combo style exists here as well. Maybe you want to find some of these less used jokers, ones that don't make really common high card decks, really common flush decks. They do something spectacular when it all comes together, more than valid way to play the game. And so I think that that's one of the absolute biggest strong suits coming into Balatro, is that regardless of how you like to play the game, there's probably a way within the game that's going to suit that need, suit that feeling that you're chasing after, and it's going to also be very attainable for a long period of time. You know, you come in, you want to score 100 million points, you can come in and score 200 million next time. You can get E to the 52. I don't know what number that is, but that feels like it's about as high as it goes. There's all kinds of things to chase after, and I think that you'll definitely find something that wets your whistle, if you will. And so, in one of my biggest observations from Balatro, I bring up the question as to whether or not we even call this a deck building style of game. It feels to me that a lot of the changes and edits you make to your deck just aren't that significant. And so, you know, on the right side of your screen, we have the starting Ascension deck. It only contains 10 cards. In the bottom center of your screen, we have the starting red deck from Slay the Spire. It was either Berserker, I can't remember, it's been too long. But again, it's 10 cards. And so not only is it a much bigger impact if you change a card, right? If we upgrade the Bash, or if we upgrade an Apprentice within the Ascension deck, we've upgraded 10% of our deck, to where if we upgrade one card within the Balatro deck, if we take the Ace of Spades, apply a Prismatic tag to it, we've updated less than 2% of our deck. And so there's a lot of change happening within the decks to get to the same level of updates, right? So if we want to go back to that same space to where we upgrade the Bash, that's upgrading 10% of our deck. If we want to upgrade 10% of our Balatro deck, we need to hit 5 separate cards, right? And that's just entirely impossible to do within the game, outside of hitting the spectral packs. Like the spectral packs maybe destroy 5 cards, change the rank of all the cards within your hand, but it's very challenging to actually impact that many cards. The next kind of big thing tying in with that is, as you play a game like Slay the Spire or a game like Ascension, you're expected to draw through your deck multiple times per game. And so within Slay the Spire, you may draw through your deck 2 or 3 times per round. Within Ascension, you might draw through your deck like 15, 20 times throughout the course of the game. It's a little bit different there, but it's expected that you're going to be drawing through your deck over and over and over again. And so as you change a card within your deck, not only is it impactful in the sense of the percentage of your deck that you're editing and changing, it's also impactful in that you're going to see that card over and over and over again, and you're going to interact with it over and over and over again. And given the way that Balatro is set up, given the way that the game is designed, not only are we editing a smaller portion of our deck, right? One edit is about 2% compared to 10% within a different game. You're not likely to draw through your deck like over and over and over again. You in fact just lose the game. If you draw through your entire deck, the game is done. And so within the space of Balatro, if you're playing, say, a high card strategy to where you only play between 1 and 5 cards for hand, you don't really spend any discards, it's very realistic that on any given round that you play, you might only see 15 cards within the 50 some cards of your deck. And so not only while we play Slay the Spire, you're guaranteed to see that card over and over and over again, you might make that upgrade to the Ace to your card within Balatro and only maybe see it 1 out of 4 rounds. And so it really strikes me as, you know, what are we building when it comes to Balatro? Now, it's not to say that having a Joker builder type of game is bad. I'm not saying that this is a poor design choice. It just kind of is what it is in that sense. But the impact that's coming from the changes that you make to your deck are very insignificant, and the changes that you're making to your jokers are what really impacts the flow of the game and the change of the game, in the sense that if you have a joker that boosts a straight, you have a joker that boosts a pair, like that is a big direct impact on what's about to happen, right? And so if you have the joker that gives you 8 mult whenever you play a pair, that's a very impactful thing to have happen, to where you can play a pair pretty much every single hand of the game. But again, upgrading that ace is something that may not really have an impact because you're just not likely to see it whatsoever. That ties into kind of the next thing that I have with the game, in that we're out here trying to upgrade our deck to work towards the jokers, right? And so let's say that we've drafted the crazy joker, we get the plus 10 mult if the hand contains a straight. Let's say we've super high rolled, right? We also found the plus chip joker that gives our hand the plus 100 chips if you hit a straight. Now, how are we going to edit our deck in terms of making this work to where we can try and hit a straight as often as possible? Well, it's easy to say, all right, well, let's just really build towards straights king to nine, right? So that gives us a bit of a wrap. So if we're really diving in and trying to hit king to nine, we can go a little bit up with the ace, we can go a little bit down with the eight. We're going to try and completely remove any card seven to deuce through our deck. So whenever we draw it, we're most likely hitting that king to nine, but we have a little bit of flexibility in what we're going to have. But how are you going to go about this now, right? You have this 52 card deck. You have what, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? That's 24 cards of your 52, essentially half of your deck that you're trying to get rid of. What is the realistic chance that you can get rid of any sizable portion of that? You can't. It's so slim. And so you go through one round, you get an Arcana pack, you get the remove 2 card, great. 2 of those cards gone. You go through the next Arcana pack, it has the thing that lets you convert a card left to right. Fine, those things are gone. You go through the next round, you get another Arcana pack, you get the thing that upgrades the rank of 2 cards by 1. And so we've gone a lot of work now, right? We've upgraded 5 of our cards to do something different to get them within that space that we're trying to within the ace to 8 rank. But as we kind of mentioned on the previous slide, that's like 10% of our deck. That's like a very small percentage of our deck that has actually changed, and it makes it very challenging to actually deck build towards any of these goals. And so what that kind of devolves the game into is you're trying to get the most power out of the absolute most easy hands to make. That's why the most powerful strategy that we're seeing in the 1.0 patch now is you're building decks either focused on making high cards or making decks built on pairs. The next piece that kind of ties into that is if you take a look at the jokers on our screen, this shit's kind of weird, right? In the sense that the second easiest hand to make, the pair, gives 8 mult. Now, I don't know the mathematics on how difficult each of these hands are to make, but a straight is the next one. A straight is much more challenging of a hand to make, but a straight takes 5 specific cards to make. For that added value of getting 5 specific cards instead of 2 specific cards, you get plus 2 mult. That's essentially negligible. Moving further down the line, you run into the Zany Joker, which is similar to a pair, right? A pair is 2 cards, 3 of a kind is 3 of the same one. Much more challenging to make, though, and you get plus 4 mult instead of plus 8. The thing that's also kind of interesting in this space is a straight is a more challenging hand to make than a 3 of a kind, but the 3 of a kind pays out more mult than the straight does. And so, there's a lot of balance numbers within here that can be tweaked. Like, I'm certain that that's what will happen in the upcoming 1.1 patch or the 2.0 patch, whatever it's going to be called. But that doesn't really get to the heart of the problem, in that you can't actually come out and build towards a straights deck. It's too challenging to actually edit and change your deck to where you're building out a straight to where you're getting those meaningful changes that you need. And so the major concern that I have with Balatro is that it is just impossible to get away from that space without really coming in and editing the Arcana packs to where they give you more meaningful changes to your deck. So what is the realistic levers that you can pull in this space right now? If we're not changing the Arcana packs, all we're doing is changing the values on the different hands. And so now we're looking at a straight. And how are we going to make the straight Joker more in line with the pair Joker? You have a couple of different things you could do, right? You make the pair Joker worse, you make the straight Joker better. And so how much better does the straight Joker need to be? It has to be essentially good enough to finish off the round when you play one hand. And so if that's the space it's going to be in, If we've deemed that the plus mult the straight joker needs to be worth building towards is enough to finish off the game in a single hand, then what do you do with flushes? Then what do you do with full houses? Those have to be in that same kind of space as well, right? To where if you have the plus mult joker for the full house now needs to be strong enough to win within a single hand, and then they're all basically just the same hand all over again. And so I don't realistically have the answer to what this is, but this has been like my big core problem with Balatro is that you never really get the incentive to build beyond anything that isn't either high card or pair, or to build beyond flushes, right? Flushes are another fairly easy hand to make that you can build decks towards. Now, when we talk about flushes, to me, the interesting thing with flushes is number one, you have the flush deck, which you can just look at as a kind of deck building exercise that's actually very interesting in the sense that it gives you like a real meaningful change to your deck. But to me, within like the normal parlance of the flush deck, is you have the cards that edit three instead of one. And when you're editing those three cards, what I mean is the one that says convert three cards to spades, convert three cards to clubs, convert three cards to diamonds, that's giving you a six card change, right? So let's say we are building towards a club flush. We open our Arcana pack. We have a diamond, we have a heart, we have a spade. We use our convert clubs card to that. That's essentially a six card swap, right? We now have three less of the suits that we don't want within our deck. We have three more of the suits that we do want within our deck. And so that's the kind of like meaningful impact that I'm really looking for whenever I open up these Arcana packs. That gives me some agency in actually coming out and building towards the flush deck to where you just can't get that out of any of these other decks based on how big the starting deck is and how unimpactful all of the various tarot cards are otherwise. And so I'm very curious to see if there's not something done within that space, because to me, that is like the heart and soul of the problem with Balatro. And so to me, that previous slide is a metagame thing, right? To where the high card is great, the pair is great, the flush is great, three of a kind, not so great, but sure, build a deck around it. Straights are terrible, right? That's a metagame thing. That's going to happen in literally every game. You play Magic, there's a best deck. You play Hearthstone, there's a best deck. You play Legends of Runeterra, there's a best deck. There's always just going to be a best deck. There's going to be something that's kind of in the same range, but not quite as good. And then there's going to be the stuff that's mid and the stuff that sucks, right? That's just the way it's going to be. Local Thunk comes in and makes changes. Who knows what's going to happen next week? Two pairs, the good deck. Three of a kind's best deck. Pairs are no longer good anymore. Those things are going to happen throughout the life cycle of Balatro. It just kind of is what it is. Now, do you have an answer to making straights good? I don't know, but the hand rankings and the hand values are going to fluctuate over time. That's going to be an evolving meta. The things that you can't fix and the things that are ultimately super, super, super frustrating to me are cards like Square Joker. Now, let's cycle back to that metagame thing, right? Let's say we're in a four of a kind metagame. We've done a lot of work to make our deck very four of a kind friendly. We'll just say it's 50% aces, and then it just has other cards in it along the way. So as we play a hand, discard, play a hand, discard, it's very easy for us to assemble four of a kinds. We have a lot of Joker support for it, all as well in the world. Now we come up to the Square Joker. We take a quick read. It gains 4 chips if the hand has exactly 4 cards in it. What sounds like exactly 4 cards? A 4 of a kind. These things sound like they're going to be super synergistic together. This is fantastic. And so we collect our Joker, we go into the next round, we slap our 4 aces on the board, we immediately win within one hand. Everything is great in the world, right? Well, not quite so much, right? We still had 3 hands remaining. We could have upgraded the Square Joker a little bit more. And so what we realistically wanted to do in that space is we wanted to play a high card of 4 a high card hand with 4 cards. We wanted to play another high card hand with 4 cards. We wanted to play another high card hand with 4 cards. And then we wanted to slap our 4 of a kind onto the board. Now, at worst, that's just some like extra mechanics that you need to pull off, right? It's not very challenging to click 5 times to play a hand, right? You play 4 cards, you hit the play button, that's 5 clicks. Herpity derpity, it's not that bad. But the place to where it starts to build to and where it starts not being fun is if the execution of those cards actually matters. And so let's say we've gone through all this work. We have this really super sweet 4 of a kind hand, but our hands aren't getting exactly close enough to just blow the game out of the water, right? Our deck isn't good enough to where that singular four of a kind is enough to automatically just win the round. And now we have to start doing a bunch of work, right? And so we play a high card hand and we say, ooh, that wasn't very good. That wasn't very strong. But let's see how the next one goes. We play another high card hand. We say, ooh, that wasn't very good. That wasn't very strong. I'm not entirely certain if my four of a kind is going to be good enough now. And so now you have to start looking at your hand and you have to start calculating and start doing this and that. And it's just like not fun to sit here and figure out if my min max strategy is good enough to beat the round and how much I can really invest in leveling up the square joker before I just outright lose the game, right? The flip side of that is not unfun to me, right? I have a four of a kind deck. I play a four of a kind. It's not quite good enough. Oh no. I play another four of a kind. That's good enough. Yay, all is right in the world. The, incremental level up of the square joker flip side of that is what really sucks. And so I play a high card. Okay. I play a high card. Okay. I get to my next hand. I'm not quite certain how good it's going to be. So now I have to have the choice. Do I just start doing a whole bunch of math, which is not what I'm here to do? Do I play the high card and then the four of a kind and just hope and dream? Or do I play the four of a kind, potentially just miss out and completely win the hand, and now I have that last hand left over? There's not a lot of great ways to get feels good moments out of this, right? The feels good epic moment is when you slam that four of a kind down, it wins, you see all the bells and whistles pop off, all the numbers start flashing on the screen. Like, that's the great moment, the great feel that you're trying to find. You're not trying to be like, ooh, high card, fuck, 3 minutes of math. Okay, four of a kind. Fuck, the four of a kind was too good. Like that, there's just nothing fun about that. And so it's like, what is the answer? Are you just expected to like min max these jokers the remainder of the way? Because as you're playing at the smaller stakes, it's not that big of a deal, right? But as you really progress into the upper end of the stakes, the upper end of the spectrum, it does become a big deal in the sense of every chip, really matters when you're trying to beat the gold stake. And like, how does it feel if you're just like, well, I'm not going to min max my square joker? You get to the final boss and then you're like 4,000 chips short, right? You would have smashed that boss if you had min maxed the square joker throughout the course of the game. But at the end of the day, you didn't do that because it's not fun. You get to the end and lose because it's just not fun that way either. And then you're left with a bad taste in your mouth. And so I'm not entirely certain to what the answer to cards like Square Joker is. Like, this is one to where having to physically play 4 cards is not the same as just having hands left over, right? There's some cards that say get plus mult for every discard remaining at the end of the round, and that's kind of easy to figure out. You're like, oh, I won the round, I had these discards left over. It added the value for me at the end of the round. Things like Square Joker can't quite do it, and it's really disappointing to have a run that's kind of going well and knowing that you just have to invest all of this mental, tomfoolery, this mental mind-numbing mathematics just to ensure you don't lose the run. And it really sucks a lot of the fun of the game out for me. And so, to wrap things up, I have given Balatro in the 1.0 patch a 3.5 stars. That's out of a 5. Or, if you are an astute viewer, if you've paid close attention to your screen, I also give this 3 stars and then another star that has a rectangle on top of it. That is the high quality content you get out of any bust video. And so the way I initially look at Balatro in terms of giving it a rating was, like the first 20 hours. How did we feel about that? I thought it was great. It was a pretty magical moment being in that hype buildup of the big indie game being unleashed on the world and just really skyrocketing in popularity. I had a great time within that 20 hours. And again, unfortunately, bringing the monetary aspect back into it, do I feel like I got a good, dollar an hour of value out of this? Did I get good financial dollar, return out of Balatro? Yeah, I feel like that was good with the first 20. If we quit playing at 20 hours, I would have felt like I spent a good $15. And so moving beyond that, the question starts to be, is this one of these games to where I'm going to invest hundreds of hours into, or even thousands of hours, or is it going to be something that turns into a, multi-year investment like we would get out of something like Magic or Legends of Runeterra? And, the the window of hours within that range I just gave you is incredibly vast. But I will say, as I've approached this 100-hour mark, I just get more and more and more frustrated with the game, and so I don't really have much desire to play it anymore. In terms of the content that I've created, I was probably done with this thing like 5 or 6 videos ago. And I don't really have desire to chase it to the max. The progression limit, the progression ladder, if you will, is very steep, and I just don't feel like you get a lot of fun slash epic runs at the higher values, and you just get more and more and more into that square Joker space of just doing a bunch of math. And so, to me, like as a spike styled gamer that wants to progress to the upper echelons, the rank 1 space of the world, like instead of being fun, it's just become frustrating for me, and I don't really have any desire to do that much further. Now, that's not to say that if you play the game for different reasons, you won't enjoy it for tons of hours. If you like to chase the scientific notation scores, if you like to just flick the cards on the low stakes, that's completely fine. You do you. You do what brings value to you. But for me as a player, I don't like the orange stake to where I'm playing on multiple decks now. And I feel like the kind of sweet spot for me is like 3 or 4 levels up. And from like a content creation perspective, that's kind of a ball sack place to be in, right? You have to really kind of like pick a niche and run with it. And like being in the space of just doing mid-tier runs doesn't really get anyone excited. And then from a player perspective, I just don't like doing that either. Like just stopping in the middle isn't what I really want to do. You got to Ricky Bobby it and go full speed all the time. And not having that chase to the top just because it's frustrating really kind of limits me in terms of the game. And so I think that's where I stand. The first 20 hours worth it. As I approached 100, not really into it. As the patch comes out next week, could I see myself playing this for another 20 or 30 hours? Sure. If I had this on my phone, would I play it a lot at the gym on the exercise bike? Absolutely. And so all in all, I think it's a fairly good value at $15. Give it that recommended buy. Give it that 3 stars plus 1 star with a rectangle on top of it rating. And so, good stuff. That is our first 100 hours of gameplay review of Balatro. I hope you found it wonderful and meaningful, a big impact on your life, because that is going to do it for us today. So, hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way. Had a good time watching. This is Bustin' Me. Thank you for being here.